Well, we'll get started. My name is Nella Ludlow. I'm in the Electrical Engineering Computer Science Department, and thank you for coming today. And we're going to talk about some best practices in how to win defense dollar research contracts. And let's figure out a way to fix the technical part of this. Yay, okay. In the drive to 25, research dollars is one of the big deals. I did an interview about a year ago before I came to Washington State University, and I was interviewing for the Dean of Research at University of Alberta. And their number one topic was how many research dollars can you bring into the program? They were comparing themselves to University of British Columbia. University of Washington tries to boast that they bring in almost $1 billion in research. Research dollars are cool because people leave you alone. You get to work on what you want. You get to do tenure, and most importantly, you can fund the things that excite you. So we'll talk a little bit about why defense dollars. I'll give a brief background of what I've done in defense research. Why is it worth pursuing? How is DoD structured? It's actually DoD, Department of Defense, is structured slightly differently than some of the others like NIH or National Science Foundation that you might be used to. There's a lot of resources here at Washington State University that we can leverage. I'll tell you about them if you don't already know about them. And some best practices of how to do it, but particularly I'm going to mention 6 things that I think are lesser known to help you get in the door, to help you win the research. Okay, so in my background, I worked as a scientist in the Air Force. I worked at 2 national laboratories, one called Rome Laboratory, which is the Information Technology Laboratory, and another one called Armstrong Laboratory, which is a human factors laboratory. I also worked as a program manager for artificial intelligence for DARPA, where we managed, as an Air Force person, I managed $1 million contracts, and we loved to give contracts to universities. It was the #1 group. We did it to big companies, but nothing better than to give a contract to a university. I also worked for Ed Feigenbaum, who is the Air Force chief scientist. He also is kind of the godfather of artificial intelligence, a professor at Stanford. And we brought over Russian scientists to the United States when the Cold War was ending because they had ideas that we wanted. I issued dozens and dozens of what's called Small Business Innovative Research Grants, STTRs, which can go to universities. And then later, I led some tech companies after I got out of the Air Force. One of them that I took public, we've got $35 million in about 5 years using these very techniques that I want to tell you about. I also have an active security clearance, a top secret clearance. I also have a retired military ID card, which lets me get onto the base to be able to talk to these people. And that's the key, is talking to them. It's a very relationship-driven type of environment. Most of all, I want to help you bring in more research dollars in the DoD area, not just for Voiland, but for WSU. So part of my job is to help you get in the door to be able to get funded. So these are 4 of my grad students. Paul Arcangeli is one of my master's students. We did a fuzzy logic problem together, and he's now the lead staffer in the House Armed Services Committee. Jan Tai is a 3-star admiral that runs Navy Cyber Command, who is one of my PhD students. Ed Mays, who was a Marine Corps student of mine when I taught at the Naval Postgraduate School, ended up becoming the commander of all Defense Acquisition University. And acquisition is their code word for giving out contracts. And Frances Kionis was another one of my thesis students, and she ran SBIR research programs Navy-wide. So I taught these guys how to do it. They're doing it today. Let me tell you a couple of the tricks how to do it. So probably one of the coolest thing is the Defense Department is extremely okay with you, the university, keeping the intellectual property rights. The Defense Department has no idea how to commercialize it. They're not going to. I've built things for them, and sometimes they'll have a lawyer on the phone. We own that. Okay, you own that. but you don't own all these cool pieces that we built. Software gets old, it gets stale. What are you going to do with it, Defense Department? Nothing. They need you to build it. And part of usually proposing for defense dollars is commercialization. They want somebody to commercialize it. That means you get to keep the intellectual property, the university does. That's cool. It's your work. You get to keep the IP, usually. Often many first serious efforts into any research turned out that they were defense related. That's not unusual. And I think importantly, you're not building bombs. You're not building chemical. It is possible there are places that might have sarin gas or some crazy thing, but 99% of the time, I've never worked on anything like that. I was in the military and I did research outside of the military. I have never worked on a bomb. I've never worked on a sarin gas. I never worked on something that was some killing machine. The Defense Department is extremely well funded. And if you followed the news lately, they even got more well funded for 18 and for 19. They often go in 2-year cycles. They understand something that's really good for us. They don't have all the answers. They need academia. They need us to propose ideas. And I think one of the biggest confusions is we look for an RFP, a request for proposal. Hey, they said they're looking for something. Let's bid on it. By then, that person's already picked. You're already behind the game. You probably aren't going to win. You might, but probably are not. You can propose your own ideas. That's the part that I think they leave out and that they are actually wanting us to do. Now, oddly, almost any research topic is considered. Look at all the different things that came from military research. Latex paint, walkie-talkies, okay, drones. I mean, some of this makes sense, but digital photography, virtual reality, the EpiPen, all these things were initially funded by defense research dollars that turned into everyday ubiquitous products. The SBIR program, which is called Small Business Innovative Research, and there's one called STTR, Technology Transfer, that we at academia get to partner with small businesses, specifically look for things that can turn into the next cool thing. They don't care if it's risky research. If 1 out of 10 of them are a success, they consider their program a success. So almost anything we work on here, highly likely the Defense Department, somebody in the Defense Department cares about it. What's interesting here, you may see that this red line is how much defense research dollars are. The blue line, all other research dollars combined together in the United States. The Defense Department outspends in research dollars everybody else combined. So if you're ignoring the Defense Department, you're cutting down on your potential areas to win. Not since about 1982 would Venera remember that that's when I graduated from WSU, so a long time ago. And I asked her during my interview, how did you know that? And she goes, oh, that's the year I was born. I was like, thanks, Venera, okay. Since that year that she was born, you can see the defense dollars have risen and risen and risen. And then we're going to add even more. You can also probably notice that under Republican administrations, there tends to be slightly more defense spending than in others. There was a blip there in 2008 that you might remember, shovel-ready projects. Let's compare to NIH. This is something a lot of people know about, National Institute of Health. $80 billion is on the Defense Department. If you add everything together for NIH, it's barely over 30. It's over double the Defense Department's budget just for research. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that there's dollars there. But I wasn't born in the United States. I'm not going to be able to get a security clearance. I'm not going to be able to work on that. That's not the case. Over 98% of the research is unclassified. You can work on a classified project and not have a clearance. What it means is you don't get access to that weird set of data. You can work on everything else, 98% of it, and then 1 or 2 people might have to have a clearance. There are people at the university. Dean Rezek has a top secret clearance. I have a top secret clearance. There are a few of the others that do as well. We can help you work in these projects. To me, the best thing, I call it a ticket to get into the movie theater. Once you get in, then you can go to their proposals. You can see what's available. If you don't have one of those clearances, you can't get on the base. You can't go to their presentation to find out about their new cool project. So partner with somebody, find somebody in one of the departments, have them help you get in the door. Okay? There's a lot of different types of clearances. There's a low-level one called confidential. There's one called secret, top secret, special compartmented information, and then crazy level, black. They have lots of different names for this crazy stuff. Okay, so I'm interested. I don't know where to start. The first place to start is you need to find out who is the technical point of contact for your area. Now, there's a whole bunch of locations. The Air Force, they're headquartered at Wright-Patterson, Ohio. If you drive up to Fairchild Air Force Base up here in Spokane, you're not going to get very far. They have air tankers, refuelers, they have a survival school. They don't do research. Now, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they have research. When I was at Rome Lab, this little place out in the middle of nowhere that was colder than here, they actually moved $2.5 billion a year through that location. That guy that ran that was the godfather of the Air Force. That guy that was the controller for that. So you need to pick the right locations. If you're dealing with the Navy, it's San Diego, a thing called Spaywar. If you're dealing with the Army, it's Fort Monmouth in New Jersey. There are different locations. I know some people, you have an Army contract, I believe, and there's some others. You can be in different locations, but they're primarily run out of a small set of locations. You want to find out where those are. Okay? Here's what I'm recommending. Speak with them. Call them on the phone. Go to a conference. Fly out to see them. I know traveling is hard. It's no fun. It makes all the difference. What happens is they have all kinds of plans set up and they're not advertising them yet. You don't even know about it. They have money that isn't even obligated to an idea yet. What's weird, and I've worked in some of these groups, there'll be a group of like 15, 20 people, just like in a department, for example, and they don't all have PhDs. Many of them have master's degrees, a lot of them are grad students, many of them are PhD wannabes. And they're very happy to talk to university people. It's their job to talk to you. So at a normal day, you're having a lot of meetings. Usually Boeing and big companies, they all come in, but universities do too. And they come in and you can pitch your idea. That's a really good time to listen to them for free and pitch out ideas. What about this? What about this? Obviously, these program managers are biased. They like certain things, they don't like certain things. Really good opportunity to talk to them and find out. Then guess what? Some junior person that just got a master's degree from University of Pennsylvania joins their group. Then the boss says, well, I'm going to give you $2 million. And the person's like, great, I don't even know what to do with it. They're brand new, they're green, they don't know. If you can mentor them and help them and show them the direction to go, you will be shocked at what a relationship you could get and grow it into something. And I'll talk a little more about that. Try to get one small win, even if it's 40, 50K. Partner with someone else and say, I'll do this little small job for 35K. Make sure you get travel budget. And then when they have a planning meeting, you go. Be in the room when they're talking. And they're going to say, 4 months from now, we're going to issue 4 $1 million contracts. That is not advertised anywhere except in that room. You found out about it because you got in the door. If you have the contract, you're allowed to get a security clearance. If you have the contract, you're allowed to have a badge to go on the base. If you have the contract, you have access to the data. Take a crummy 30K contract, it's not crummy, but an initial one to get in the door, and then you will grow it. Okay? Work with them to grow it. And ultimately, what you end up doing, the real rock stars here at the university and other places, you build a portfolio from Army and Navy and Air Force, and you're doing all these programs all around your research. and you can juggle them in between. And there's overlap, and you build a very cool portfolio. That's how successful research companies did it. That's how I did it. I gave a talk at the Washington Technology Center as a keynote speaker as a tech company, and they said, well, how did you do it? It's exactly how he did it. I took really small contracts, and I was a rock star with them. And I made sure they were happy, and then I grew that whole program. I helped them write the next RFP for the next project. I helped them make their slides when they were presenting to their boss of why the research was important. I helped them do their job. They're young. Often we have more experience, almost always, than these program managers do. So they need our help. Okay, let me tell you, but where do I find this information? FedBizOps is the standard one. Technically, every government contract is supposed to be listed in this. Now there's tricks. Sometimes they want you to have the contract. So they're going to say, at 2 o'clock in the morning, make sure that somebody's ready to bid on this thing, because noon the next day it's going to close. It happens. It's ridiculous. If you think that there's a completely open, fair competition, in my personal assessment, I don't believe that's always the case. I'm trying to be very politically correct in how I say that. But they have people they like. And once they do, they trust you. It's a trust relationship. Another good one is called Pivot. I think most of you know about that. I have some information here on Pivot. I'll give it to Vanera and he can pass around. And it is the database for researchers. It also has RFPs. It's not just for the government. It's for towns and cities and overseas and companies and 501c3 non-for-profits. All are listed in this. And you, as a professor, can say, I have an interest in it. And then you can find out who else has an interest in it, and you could partner with each other. Talks, presentations. This really is the tool for getting research. What's cool about it is it's free. There's other ones that aren't as academic oriented that I used in the business world. Super, super expensive, in the order of $40,000, $50,000 a year. We have free access to this. And by the way, if you don't know about this, and you're like, I've never heard of this thing, then I would recommend March 8th, there's a little thing, they'll show you how to use it. It's awesome. Okay, so let me just mention a couple quick other things. I recommend you go beyond the RFP. By the time it's listed in FedBizOps, or by the time it's listed in Pivot, they already know who they want to win. Probably. 2 words to know, a TPOC and a COTAR. The technical point of contact and the contracting officer's technical representative. If you go look at the RFP, they're going to list, and it says CO or ACO, the assistant contracting officer or the contracting officer. That person is a financial person. They worry about contracts, terms and conditions. They might negotiate prices with the research center. They don't know the first thing about electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. They're contract weenies is what they call them in the government. Okay? They don't know anything. It's okay to call them and say, who is the TPOC? That's your equivalent. That's the person you want to talk to. That's the person that's on the source selection that's going to pick you. You highly, highly recommend you find that person. Another trick to do is there's a thing called the SADBU, Small Disadvantaged Small Business Unit. Every one of these locations has one of these things. But we're a big university. We're not a small business. Yes, but a couple cool things. Those people are specially selected to be extremely helpful. So they're not kind of mean, hang up on the phone, I don't care type of people. They're people that really genuinely care. They also have the list of every TPOC and resource person on the whole location. Also, your entry can be, I would like to partner with a small business. I have this cool technology and I'm looking for some small business to work for. They get credit for partnering with small businesses. If you're there and there's an org chart or phone list laying around, which there almost always is, and you're visiting, grab it. Keep that. That thing's like gold, because then later you can go, oh, I'm going to call this person, I'll call this person. That's your list of TPOCs. You want that phone list. I have no problem cold calling in. I went to NSA one time, and I literally got into their R building, which is a research building, and I just started talking to people, and they go, no, that's not this person, it's over there. They're normal people. They want, it's secret, we're not going to tell you. That's not what they do. They want your help. Oh, well, that person would be down on the second floor, office 215. Okay. Bottom line, it's their job to talk to you. They're supposed to take meetings with you. Okay? So go ahead and bother them. That, again, it's their job. I want to show this slide just because there's a lot of federal stuff. This is what's called an FFRDC, Research and Development Centers that are federally funded. These are not Defense Department ones. You might notice one of the places I got to work one summer, Los Alamos. We have Pacific National Northwest Laboratories. Those are not typically defense ones. Those are Department of Energy. They have their own set of clearances. They have their own set of contract deals. They're in their own camp. They also have a lot of money. But you can see there's a bunch of those. There's a website that the Defense Department has, and it's called ACQ, Acquisition. There's a whole Secretary of Defense, Assistant Secretary of Defense, who works on nothing but acquisition. And look at all these different groups. We got the Defense Department themselves, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, DARPA, used to be called ARPANET. They work on innovative technologies where they glue them together. You may have heard of ARPANET, which became the internet. They were the guys that funded that. And there's a bunch of weird ones that you might not have heard before. DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Their sole job is to make sure no one brings a nuke bomb in the United States and blows it up. Yeah, they have over $1 billion. There's a whole bunch, hundreds and thousands of people working at all these different groups that are all Defense Department related. They're so big that often they don't communicate really well with each other. That means the Army doesn't always know what the Navy's working on. You could end up knowing more about it than they do. And you can help them. And at conference, you can bid on this and say, hey, you know, there's this thing over here. Okay. Let me just throw out a couple terms. We already did COTAR and TPOC. They use the term level of effort. You don't say, hey, how much money can I get? You say, what's the level of effort? You are completely allowed to ask this question. How could you possibly bid if you don't know what they're looking for? Now, sometimes they'll say, oh, 2.5 million max. Okay, but what are you looking for? I would ask that question because they have an answer. We're going to prefer that we'd like to give 5 $500,000 grants out. Thank you, then I'm going to come in with 499.9 because that's what they want. I have no problem asking them these questions. A good program manager will guide you and actually kind of say, you know, I really like what University of Maryland's doing, and if you partner with Jim Hendler over there, that might be a good idea. Good program managers do that. Some of the junior ones don't, and they just say good luck. But if you can get them to talk, please give me some feedback. There's a thing called technology readiness level. We are going to be at the bottom level here. Basic technology, research to prove that it's even feasible. Maybe we'll start doing some development. And the higher end would be a technology demonstration. Now, oddly, there's less dollars here and more dollars here. This is usually where we do research. This is where Boeing and Lockheed Martin glue stuff together. You kind of have to know where you are on this. When we deal with contracting, the university will help you. There is one term that you need to know, and it's called the CAGE code. And I'll show you that on the next slide. Also, and budget activity code. So in the defense dollars, they number them all by sixes, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, all the way to 6.7. 6.1 is basic hardcore research. 6.2 is applied, maybe some technology development. This is the area we're going to bid in. Once you start getting past that, it's, hey, what if we took a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and glued them together, and it's not research anymore. It's proving that some technology works, but it's not really research. Probably not the area. So we'll be focusing on this. Here is our CAGE code. It's a 5-digit code. It's the 5-digit that you need to apply for a grant. If they ask you your CAGE code, here's what it is. Where did I get this? I got this off of the ORSO's, and you can see they got all kinds of things on their website, like Washington State's UBI, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about any of that. If you're dealing with the Defense Department, CAGE code is the way to go. It's your entry to get in. The rest of the stuff, and if you don't know, ask me, ask ORSO, they'll help you with this stuff. You don't need to know too much about it. Other than that, the reason I say that is you may be submitting something on to one of their websites at 10 o'clock at night, and they're going to ask you for this code, and nobody will be around. That's why I want you to know that number. Okay, so let me just briefly say some of the WSU groups that are here to help you. I know about bringing in research dollars, but every group is different. And WSU has some groups that are specifically here to help you. The Office of Research in Lightly Hall, there's a whole bunch of people here that are very helpful. Dave Field, who Dave, is here and works for VCEA, and his focus is to help us with research and development. So Dave can help us. Another person that I want to mention, because I think she's very helpful, is a young lady in the Office of Research in Lightly Hall called Emily Brash here. She's awesome. Go talk to her, she will help you. She'll walk you through Pivot. Every month they're doing some new training on how to do stuff. Very, very helpful lady. Obviously, there's lots of other people over there. Okay, with all that said, the goal is to call them, better yet, meet with them. After you speak with them, sure, go ahead and submit an RFP. But I want to mention a new method, an unsolicited white paper. What's the format to an unsolicited white paper? There isn't one. It's, I don't know, 1 to 8 pages long. You put the cost, you put what your work you're going to do, and you're going to give it to your program manager. And you're going to say, I could do this. After we talked in that last meeting we had, and you liked this idea, for $400,000, I think we could do this. And you'd list maybe a couple people, not a big proposal, something short. And they're going to go, okay, thanks. It was unsolicited. There is no RFP. It's not in any database. It's your idea. You made it up. The chances of winning, if you've never talked to them, is less than 1 in 12, statistically. The number of people that submit STTRs and SBIRs research grants, about 8% get funded, so about a 1 in 12, or ish. That's not very good odds. And remember, there are people that did talk to them, so they're going to clearly beat you out. If there's a thing called a bidder's brief, that's where a large project is going to be, and they're going to tell everybody what's going on. Now, it's a little late in the game. Definitely go. The main reason to go is to see who else is in the room. If Carnegie Mellon's in the room, and you think Carnegie Mellon's going to win, go partner with Carnegie Mellon. Go talk to them. They even put a list on the bottom of the website of everybody who was there and all their email addresses. You want that. By all means, pick up. When I was CEO of a company, competitors would walk in and everybody would be quiet. No one would talk to each other. I purposely would talk to all my competitors and I would make deals with them. If it came down to 2 people, Stanford and Carnegie Mellon, and those are the 2 that are going to win, what if they joined forces? If they did that, everybody else isn't even going to have a shot. Sometimes you do it because you each get half of the work. Why not? Okay. Find partners. Be very careful when asking questions. This, to me, is a rookie mistake. So what happens is, now that they're saying, okay, we're going to do this big thing next month, and you can submit a question. Problem is, now we're at what's in a formal period. Before, we could just go chat with them, go to lunch, do whatever we want. It's open season. You can do anything you want. Oh, we're in formal contract period. Everything changes during that time. So if Venera asks me a question and I give her an answer and I'm the program manager, I have to post it to a website and tell everybody. If you already know what the answer is likely, don't ask the question. You just helped all your competitors. I never understand why companies do this. Like, well, see how smart I am? I asked a question. Yeah, and you just told everybody the answer. Just be quiet. If you've already got it figured out, only ask questions that you absolutely need the answer to because everybody else is going to see the answer. Okay? Sometimes they will call you and say, I really would appreciate if you submitted. Now, they can't say, I want to pick you. That's illegal. They can't do that. But if they say, I want you to submit, that is code for please submit. There's a really high likely chance you're going to win. If they do that, follow through. And they do. I've had it happen to me at companies because they already knew who was likely to bid, and they were like, we really want you guys, we hope your company, you do good work, we'd like you. But you didn't go to any of the meetings. Please, we hope you submit. That doesn't mean you're going to win, but if they tell you that, follow through. Okay, so here's my 6 areas that I think are lesser known. The first one is the one I mentioned, unsolicited white paper. Of this last company I did, we won about $35 million in about 6 years' time. How much percentage of that was I bid on an RFP versus an unsolicited white paper? Half, 20%, what do you think? Turned out 100% of it were white papers that we just made up. 100% of the $35 million that we got was not in an RFP. I came up with the idea. I pitched it to them. And they go, oh, that's a pretty good idea. One time, I bid on a wireless thing, an AI planning tool of where to place wireless access points. And I wrote the best paper, and I didn't follow my advice, and I didn't talk to the program manager in time because I read about it the last second, it's due next week. I wrote it, and I threw it over the fence. I did not get picked. So I ended up talking later to one of my thesis students, who she's running the Navy thing. She goes, why didn't you call me? And I thought, well, because I didn't really want to take advantage of you helping me on this. And she said, look, I know those guys, I'll call them. She did, and she forwarded me the email stream. I used to select these. What this guy wrote did not shock me, but I want you to hear it. He said, well, actually, we never read it. They were sitting on a table. They threw them away and they grabbed the one they wanted. They're busy. They got kids. They have things to do. They have work. You think they read every proposal perfectly? Sure, like every professor grades perfectly, right? That's supposed to be a joke. Okay. So what happens is he admitted, I never even read it. So then the next email came back, goes, hey, this is kind of good. The next one goes, this is awesome. This is a really good topic. So then I did it the smart way. I went and met him. And he said, oh, I want to meet at some sports bar. Okay, I don't know, whatever. So I go to the sports bar, I show him the idea, he goes, this thing's awesome. And then guess what? On the next round of proposals was my abstract, word for word, as a request for proposal. Oh. Then I started getting scared. Wait, I might not win my own research idea. So I had to write even better than I did before to make sure I really won this. And one that Partha knows, Ted Rappaport, who's a rock star in wireless, he bid too. And that guy's a rock star in it. And he bid on my idea. I was like, oh, that was scary. Guess what? The government gave us both a contract. I ended up selling my company, and he ended up selling his called Wireless Valley to Motorola. Both the government liked those ideas, and they both took off, and they both turned into something cool. They can do that. Okay. Make it short. Use bullets. Make sure you show what the dollar amount's going to be. They got to see the dollar amount. Put it right on the top. This one's complicated for you, perhaps. You need to know who it is. Who is the customer? The customer is not Navy SPAWAR. It's not a research person. It's a war fighter. They're doing research on behalf of some pilot or special operations or somebody, some new Kevlar stuff that protects somebody. So you have to know who that customer is. This is where I can help you. If you know the customer, and you can have a letter from somebody in the Army saying, we love this thing, and they send it to the research place, that helps a lot. They can't just do research on any made-up thing. It's got to have a customer for them. SAL, which is a short statement of work, You do not need an RFP to submit this thing. This is informal. I even checked with WSU Research on this, and Dave can comment. I don't believe you have to formally route these. These are not formal documents. They're not binding. It says, I would do about this much work. Here's my cool idea and $400,000, and these 3 researchers will work on it. That's not formal. That's not a contract. I don't think it even needs to get routed through the ORSO or anybody. And I checked with them this morning. They agreed. But what's cool about it, I've seen this happen hundreds of times. Somewhere around August, they're going to say, I've got $2 million. What would you do with it if I gave you $2 million? Program manager. But I need the answer by today. I happen to have a pre-written unsolicited proposal from Washington State University. Woohoo! Guess which one gets picked? If you're ahead of the game and you have something written, you'll get picked. Other people don't have time. Write it ahead of time. Do it unsolicited. Don't wait for them to ask. Okay, this program, just briefly want to mention it. It's like small business, but it gets you in the door. Technology transfer, a small business has to partner with a university. There's 3 phases, $150K, $1 million over 2 years, and this third category that is unfunded. Congress can fund that. The DoD can fund it. For these not being funded, I won 3 of them. And they have millions of dollars attached to it. Usually you win phase 1, then phase 2, and phase 3. So Ted Rappaport, we both won a phase 1, and then we had to compete for phase 2. And he won a phase 2, and I won a phase 3. So, okay, teaming. This is often overlooked. I'm going to write a proposal by myself. I don't recommend that when you're a junior person or even a senior person. Get the best people out there and form the best team and clobber the competition. Go in and just be the best team that there's going to be. Even if you have a small piece on it. That's how we collaborate nowadays. We don't just walk down, Dana Hall and talk to each other. We actually, it's through the internet. You get to talk to all the other rock stars in the world. So make sure that you win the contract. Now, I teach my students in my 302 class, there's 2 reasons to partner. Because I don't know how to do the job, so I need them to technically do a piece. Or I need them to win the job. I was bidding on a Homeland Security contract. I was a small business. Their definition of small business is under 500 people. To me, I thought 300 people was a lot of people. They thought it was small. They said, we'd really appreciate it if you partnered with Boeing or somebody. Okay, I heard what they were saying. They wanted a big company and a little company glued together. Okay? There are reasons that you want to partner. Join the winning team, get a seat at the table, increase your odds of winning. And what I would say is try to find a natural split of the work. Don't say, well, you'll do 50%, we'll do 50%. That's kind of a made-up thing. Sometimes we're going to do the planning and they'll do the scheduling, or something that really makes sense in your research. It's really obvious. They're the best at this and you're the best at that. Try to find some natural technical division of the work. It will help you later on in the contract, rather than you get 50% no matter what you do. Okay? Try to go to lunch with them, travel to their location, know their problem, know their biases, use their lingo. It's hard to do, but the more you do it. One thing in academia we have to be aware of, that these government contracts, if they say that there's a deadline on a certain day, they mean it. Almost always, if you're even 1 hour late, they throw it away. It's kind of silly, doesn't make sense, but usually that's the case. One time I submitted one, and we spent so much time writing the proposal, I literally sent the proposal with DHL and FedEx. I even thought about flying there myself to hand it in to Washington, D.C. because we didn't want to lose this thing. So I sent it 2 different ways. The next day was September 11th in D.C. And only one of the packages made it in. And they did not give us an extension. I thought, of all days, no extension. You'd think they would have on that day, and they didn't. So thank God DHL made it, FedEx didn't on that case. On these small ones, be the overachiever. There's a couple people here at WSU that are so good with their program managers. The program manager comes out here and says, hey, have your grad students pitch some cool ideas to me. They trust them that much. Once you get going and you get one program, then you get another and another and another. I started out with a $100,000 contract with Air Force once, and I turned it into $11 million of funding over time. That's what you want to do. That's how it is. Getting in the first one's hard. Once you get in and they trust you, you can grow it. One last thing to be a little aware of is that the civil service people, they stay. And the military people, which I was one of them, they move you around every 2-3 years. And when they do, you're up and you're gone. So here you are, you're making contracts, you're doing all this cool stuff, and you've invested time into this person, and they're gone. So be a little wary that the military guys might not always stay. Now, they may go do 20 other cool things, and they're worth knowing, but they might not be at your Air Force research lab next month. Okay, the SABU thing. There's women-owned. 8A stands for minority contractors. American Indian-owned. HUBZone is historically underutilized business district. There's several of them here in Washington State. Every American Indian reservation is a HUBZone. Veteran-owned, disabled veteran. The SABU office gets points for giving a contract to one of those. Some of these businesses that are out there, for all I know, they could be all 5 of those categories. They get 5 times the points. You get $1 million contract, that person gets $5 million worth of points for doing a good job. I, as a university, would like to partner with one of those quintuple rock star companies. Right? They're 5 times more likely to, well, not exactly, but way more likely to win. Use these people. They're very friendly. Even though we're not a small business, every group has one. They will definitely be helpful and help you. CRADA. This is an often overlooked thing, primarily because there's no dollars associated with it. You don't get paid under a CRADA. Well, then why do it? Because you've joined a cooperative research and development agreement. That's what it stands for. You get access to the data that they have. Their people can become postdocs or grad students here. We can go work in their lab. We can use their electron microscope. I had a CRADA and I was getting to use a supercomputer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I didn't have a supercomputer at my company, but I got to use theirs. All because of a CRADA. This is actually a super overlooked technique, but it makes you a partner with them. No dollars, but you can use all their resources. Okay, here's an example of the Navy's Naval Research Lab's CRADA. Whole bunch of information. Takes a little bit of paperwork. Once you do it, it's worth it. Okay, here's another one that almost sounds too good to be true. The government fiscal year for the state of Washington is June 30th. So I bet Partha has different things happen in May, in June, than he does on July 1st. It's 2 different fiscal years of money. The federal government, it's September 30th. And literally they have to get the money spent. If you don't spend the money in the government, then you just weren't doing your job. It can be spent up until midnight. And literally, they will have the contracting offices open right up to midnight. And they are pushing out as many contracts out the door. You'd like to think in February all the contracts are going to go out, but like most procrastinators, a whole bunch of stuff happens in September. A lot of people get money in September. Now what happens is, you're not going to be able to spend it all. I had this $1 million, but I was late. I didn't get organized. I couldn't write a contract, and contracts take time. Like 2, 3, 4 months. It's not a quick deal. I'm stuck. This is where, when I was in the government, I went from understanding a little bit to just doing almost anything I wanted to do. MIPR, M-I-P-R. It stands for it's a way of transferring money from one military group to another. And I would find a group that did know how to get stuff on contract. I had friends up at Rome Laboratory, and I was at a different base. I would say, I have $1 million and I can't spend it. I'm going to send it to you, and I want you to put it on contract, to put Washington State University on contract. And they would do it. Now, there's a little bit of trust involved. They do this all the time, deals galore. So what happens is all kinds of government people have no idea how to get their money spent. And if you can help them do it, I will help you help them do it. With MIPR, we can move it to another government agency who can put you on contract. Now, there's these things called contract vehicles, GSA, Alliance, Seaport E, Navy, NSENS, Air Force, Eagle, Homeland Security. You get on this contract in advance. It's painful. It takes 2, 3, 6 months to get on contract. But once you're on contract, they can put money to you in a day. You want to get on this thing. If you get on that, they can take that $200,000 that was laying around that they were going to lose, and they can give it to you overnight. It's a choice between throwing the money away. They'll pick companies that they want second tier and third tier. They would love to give it to this guy at Harvard, but this guy at Harvard never figured out how to get it on contract. We did. They picked us. They couldn't give it to the guy in Harvard. Impossible. It's going to go away. This is scary. Another one is called a pass-through. We're going to give it to somebody else, and they're going to subcontract to us. It could be crazy stuff. I gave money to University of Washington's Applied Physics Lab. We give them money, and they're supposed to give it to somebody else. Okay, all I have to do as government is do it by September 30th. I gave it to APL. It's their job over the next few months to give it to the next guy. The money's still alive. It's a weird thing. If you get into this, have your proposals by July and August. Give it to them, unsolicited, even if they say they don't want it. Who cares? Write up a 3-page thing and give it to them, because there's going to be a moment they're going to say, oh, I got this $2 million. Hey, EECS wrote this cool proposal. Mechanical engineering people wrote this. I'm going to fund it. I cannot tell you how many hundreds of times I saw this happen. Okay, it's scary. It's actually, I think if everybody fully understood this, they might be embarrassed or upset, but this is the reality of budgets. The money goes away on October 1st. It's gone. Okay, so in summary, super well funded. More money in DoD research than any other group you're going to find. They cover every topic that you can imagine. They're going to let you keep the intellectual property. It's not about building bombs. And you don't need a security clearance to do this. Now, it is highly relationship driven. You have to be proactive. You have to work with the program manager. You need to visit them if possible. At minimum, call them. Don't send proposals and throw it over the fence and hope you win. Ask help from the small business office. It's part of their, they will be helpful, let's just say that. When you write the proposals, try to meet with them before you submit. Definitely do this unsolicited white paper. Universities rarely do it. Companies do it a lot. It's a really good technique. Partner with somebody to get in the door. Bid on even something very small. Help them grow. Consider doing creatives and ask for follow-up money. And then also ask for help. Dave's here, the Office of Research at WSU. I will help you. We want to help you bid on more defense dollars. It's their job to meet with you. It's their job to pick and do new, cool, innovative things. So there's my email address. And we're glad to answer any questions, and I'll end with we're here to help you. Yes?
In fundamental research, would you suggest the best entry point would be the program manager at, say, the FOSR or ONR, or through the military labs like NRL?
That's a really good question, and I have found that they do it in parallel. And I worked at the lab. I've been to AFOSR a few times. I even had a job lined up there, and I never ended up working there. They end up doing things in parallel. They tend to do a little bit more basic research at AFOSR and ONR, which are Office of Naval Research and the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. Happen to be in the same building, by the way, in Washington, D.C., so you can go visit them both on the same day. They're a little more $6-1 oriented, but I would say no, I would visit both. And it's so collaborative nowadays. I was at Rome Lab running DARPA contracts. One of my PhD students later ran stuff from ONR and was running it on behalf of Naval Research Lab. They collaborate a lot. They don't have a lot of good people to run it. The number of PhDs in the military is very small. Most of them are grad students. Most of them, I'd say, are PhD wannabes. I would go to both. Now, ONR and AFOSR are smaller and they have less dollars. Air Force Research Lab, Navy Research Lab, Army CCOM, they're huge. They have billions and billions of dollars. AFOSR and ONR have in terms of hundreds of millions. So they're at a different level, about 10 times bigger. So I would not ignore NRL. So the right answer, I guess, is to go with both. Any other questions?
So I guess I don't understand the difference between the teapot and program manager.
Essentially, it's the same term.
Okay.
It's the same term. Often there's a more senior person in the group, and you will be shocked at how junior some of these people are. Some of them have only a bachelor's degree, and they're trying their very best, and then they're in their 20s. And they're literally told, here's $16 million. You have to manage these 12 contracts. It's often a little over their heads. So if you can help them, so when you're pitching ideas, don't always assume that they understand every technology like you do. You can PhD them to death very quickly. They're going to, oh, what? They don't know all that stuff. Sometimes you have to help them understand it. Now, if they're up to speed, and several of them are, then you can instantly jump up. But be aware that these people are going to be at different levels.
So every time I go to DC, about 2 weeks before, I get my list and I call everybody and email everybody, say, hey, I want to talk about this, and I try to get that meeting set up. I'd say I might get maybe 1 in 5 responses back from program managers. But the university's got fixers that if they call, it's almost like 100%. But not all of us can work with the fixers to set up the meeting. So, I mean, to get that first conversation and that response back seems to be...
Getting that first conversation is everything. That's why I'm willing to take a $30K contract to get in the door, because then you're one of them. You're literally sitting in their office. You're having meetings literally in their office, and their whiteboard says, we're going to do this project. And you're like, I'm looking at the whiteboard. I can see everything of what the new projects are. Prior to that, I'm looking at a dumb database, and I don't know anything. I'm not saying it's easy to get in. I'm saying it's hard to get in. But they are supposed to take your meetings. I would be persistent. I would call them again and bug them again. And a friend of mine who later ended up doing the Software Engineering Institute, he and I were professors at the Air Force Institute of Technology, he claimed he wanted to win some contracts so bad that he literally timed it and got in an airplane back in the day and got on the same seat right next to one of the DARPA program managers, so that for the next 3.5 hours they had to listen to him pitch his idea. I don't know. I mean, that's crazy level, but it worked. It worked. The way he told his stories, he actually said, and then his friend in Washington, D.C., made sure he got in the same flight and said the same stuff all the way back, so they got hit twice. So I don't know. It's very hard to get in. There are fixers. There are people that WSU has in Washington, D.C. We have people in Seattle. I know many of these people. Lucky for me, several of my master's students and PhD students are at these places. They're not going to know the right exact person, but I have no problem calling them and say, can you help me find the person that we should speak to? And they usually can do that. They tend to soften up once you meet with them. They're just regular people and they relax down, and then you get in. But it's very relationship driven, unfortunately. Or better or worse, it's the reality of it. Any other questions?
In terms of the writing, would you do it differently compared to an NSF proposal, for example? Would you put as many technical details that you put in an NSF proposal, or would you go more?
Well, NSF proposal, some other, like NIMH and NSF sometimes have peer reviews that are required. Not always, but sometimes. Often the Defense Department does not have peer reviews. It is usually not required. It's usually 4 people that end up on the source selection committee, and if you're smart about it, you can guess who 3 of the 4 are going to be when you go and visit them, right? It's the person you talk to, the guy down the hall, and their boss, and then there's some 4th person you didn't guess. But you could probably figure out who they're going to be. So there would do I had my PhD's in natural language processing. I was at Rome Lab, and the CIA says, we want to work on a cool natural language processing thing. Well, they don't know how to do it, so they'd throw it over to the Air Force to manage the contract. Well, it wasn't mine. It was Carrie Pine down the hall. Well, guess who else was on the source selection committee? Me. Because there's only 3 of us that happen to know anything about it. You can almost guess after you've been there for a while and kind of figure out who the people are going to be. And it comes down to and then what happens is you sit there and you go through all these proposals and it takes forever, and there's some lawyer guy that makes sure that everything's legal, and then you grade it, and then they issue who it is. And it's those 3-4 people. It's not peer reviewed. It's not always perfect.
So you go high level?
I would go higher level with the DoD.
They do that. I mean, in your white paper, what's the risk of IP or giving away the core concept of tech? Because I've had white papers I submitted that ended up going through all kinds of UW companies in Seattle and everything, and then everything just went dead after it was super hot.
I hate that when that happens, and they're not supposed to do that. You can mark something company proprietary, and the way we treated it, if it said company, university, proprietary information, technically, I'm not saying it happens this way, but you're supposed to treat that like classified information. You don't leave that out on your desk. It has to go into a safe. You better not give it to somebody else. You could be sued for that. Now, does it happen? Yes. What I found was really odd is sometimes I would pitch a cool idea to the Navy research person, and it turns out they're competing with me. Because they're also like, hey, maybe I could do that idea myself. And they're like, whoa, I thought you were managing contracts. When did you start doing research? Oh, wait a minute, you just took my idea. It was starting to happen a little bit about 10 years ago. They're shifting more back to project management mode and less to doing their own research. There are some real researchers there. I wouldn't give them all your cool ideas. I would give them enough to get them excited. And the unsolicited white paper, okay, it's like dating. You're just trying to get somebody's phone number. You're not trying to get everything, okay? It's not a full proposal. If they want a full proposal, they will ask you for one. Don't waste your time writing a 30-page proposal. Write a 2-page proposal, put the dollar on what you will do. And when they're in a bind, and they will happen in August and in September, they will call you up and you'll get funded. Somebody else won't.
I have a question about sort of following the money. With SBIR, it's pretty easy. There's a clear database. I go, I find out
Yes.
who the companies are, who gets the money, and I can look them up. Now, for the non-SBIR side of it, does the Department of Defense have a similar type of access?
Yes.
You have to tell me, number one, how much to whom and who gave it. And
FedBiz Ops, instead of saying I'm looking for all, it defaults to, hey, show me all the cool proposals in the next 90 days. It's just like if you go online and you're saying, hey, I want to look at all the houses for sale. You actually can change the database and say, oh, nope, I want to see how many just sold. And that same database will tell you who got awarded. And by law, it has to be out there. Now, if it's classified like some CIA Black World thing, no, they can cover it up and you won't see it. But that's rare. All the stuff we work on in research, no, it's all out there. And you can actually search by company and see all their contracts.
And that would give me also the person who was running the program.
Not always. It'll give the name of the company, and if it's big like Boeing, then you're like, okay, now I'm stuck. Who deep in there? Now, if you can get into some of the contracts, you can actually sometimes see. I have no problem. What I usually do is the people with the money, they're always listed. Contracting officer. I call that person and say, who's the TPOC? Who's the technical person? And then they go, oh, they will gladly tell you because they want to get rid of you. They're like, I don't know. I don't know anything about this. Talk to this person, and they will give you that phone number. Then you're like, okay, now I'm back on solid ground. That was a bunch of financial hoopla. This is where I want to be. That's how I do it. And the contracting officers, I don't think I've ever had them not tell. I mean, I would, well, why? Why would you not tell me? They're the government. They're supposed to say.
You only get the administrative person.
You only get the administrative. If you look at the contract, often the technical people are buried way down in there, and all you get is the contract financial people. Call them and say who's the real technical person behind it. They're the decision maker. They're the person who understands your technology. The contracting person only does what they're told. The technical person told them award the contract. They didn't just make, I'm going to give a contract. No, they wait, and that person does it.
It's very different from NSF where I get the person.
It is different than NSF on that, and it's hidden. And so that's the trick. Get the technical person. Dave?
So I have a question following up with Jake's, because it's difficult to get program managers to get meetings with them. And so what I've typically done is I've found out who they're funding and then go to presentations at conferences for people they're funding. And usually I find these program managers in the conference, they're listening to the people who are presenting the work. But you just said that there's less technical people, less people doing actually research that are the point of contacts, and so is that going to be more difficult?
Well, they'll often give presentations. So you'll see something like 5 names on a research paper, right? And the grad student really wrote it, and the professor has his name on it. That happens a lot with the government TPOC. What'll happen will be this company, these 4 hardcore researchers did it, and then the Navy lieutenant who has a master's degree gets his name attached to it too, and they sometimes give the presentation.
The people who write it always have to list their funding source.
Yes.
So you can do a search on that and find out who's being funded by what contracts.
Right, and usually if it's 6.1 research or 6.2, they'll say that you have to put at the bottom of your research papers this was funded by. But what if it's something 6.3 and you built something cool and it wasn't really directly out of their research? You don't have to put that line in there. And so sometimes people are still publishing papers. I highly recommend going to conferences and go meet with them and get to meet actually with the program manager.
That's the best way I've found to meet. I
Yeah.
think all of them that I know are people I've met at conferences.
Conferences is a great thing to do. The one thing about professors, we all like to talk. We like to talk about our research, and they do too. So it's very easy to get to engage them to talk about what they're doing. They like to talk about it. It's their job. They're supposed to. And if they don't, push on them a little bit. They're supposed to take meetings. I know they blow you off sometimes, but it's their job to meet with you. It's not the other way around, like they're granting you a favor. They're getting paid by taxpayers' money to do this. This is their job. Okay, we'll end there. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be glad to help you.